Please be seated, everyone. Good morning. Good morning and welcome to the 57th Annual Deborah Morton Convocation Ceremony. My name is Cynthia Taylor, and I'm the Vice Chair of the Board of Trustees, and I am very happy to be here and welcome you in Innovation Hall. On behalf of the entire board, I'd like to say thank you for joining us as we celebrate and induct our 2018 Deborah Morton awardees. These women will join the ranks of generations of important Maine women who have distinguished themselves as leaders. This year, we are pleased to honor 3 women who, in the spirit of Deborah Morton, have made lasting contributions to the state of Maine and points far beyond our good state. I have Anita Stewart, Peggy Rotundo, and distinguished President Emeritus of the University of New England, Dr. Daniel N. Rippich. These 3 women have achieved high distinction in their careers and have dedicated their time to civic leadership, education, advocacy, and the arts. It is our pleasure to honor them today. At this time, I would like to introduce Theo Calico, Chair of the Deborah Morton Society Steering Committee. Like many members of the Society, Theo has played important roles in the economic, educational, and community system services in Maine. She spent nearly 2 decades as the president of the University of Maine at Farmington, where she set a new standard for community engagement and advocated fiercely for women's issues. In 2006, Theo was welcomed into the Deborah Morton Society. In her acceptance speech, she emphasized the importance of our empowering other women to be leaders in higher education. We need leaders in every aspect of our life. Women are important and are showing that. She spoke about the tremendous progress that had been made in moving women's rights forward since she was a student in the 1960s. But she also reminded the audience that there was much progress still to be made. In the words of Wendy Wolf, she said, "The road changes as we're walking on it." We are glad to be walking with you, Theo. Please join me in welcoming Theo Calico. I want to make sure I leave you in the right place. Thank you.
Thank you for that lovely introduction, Cindy. Happy to know somebody was paying attention. Good morning, everyone. I welcome the friends and family members of today's awardees, former Deborah Morton Society Award recipients, students, faculty, professional staff, members of the University of New England's Board of Trustees, President Herbert, and graduates of Westbrook Junior College and Westbrook College. It was nearly 12 years ago that I was inducted into the Deborah Morton Society, and that honor was bestowed upon me at your first Deborah Morton Convocation, President Rippich. I'm very pleased to share the stage with you again. So Deborah Morton was a graduate of Westbrook Seminary, the precursor to Westbrook and what is now the Portland campus of the University of New England. Her association began in 1876 as a student of Westbrook Seminary and extended into the 1940s as a member of the faculty of Westbrook College. She was a teacher, a dean, a linguist, a historian, and a prominent civic leader in the Portland community. It is my privilege to serve a society whose namesake paved the way for women leaders in Maine and beyond to pursue their quest for education and nurture their curiosity. Today, we celebrate Deborah Morton, we celebrate past award recipients, and we celebrate our current awardees. Congratulations to all. It's now my pleasure to turn the podium over to the President of the University of New England, Dr. James D. Herbert.
Thank you very much, Theo, and thank you, Cindy, as well. It's my pleasure to welcome you all today for the 57th presentation of the Deborah Morton Awards. So I attended my first Deborah Morton Convocation last fall, shortly after being sworn in as UNE's sixth president, and I emerged from the ceremony really inspired by the many women that I met, and I've continued to be inspired over the course of the last year as I've gotten to know many of you better. I have been very proud to be part of this tradition of women leaders, of celebrating women leaders here in Maine, and also the founding institutions that brought UNE together to the place it is today. These women have played very important roles in positioning the state of Maine for where it is today, and the Westbrook College in particular has served as an amazing institution to set the foundation for the paths for many of these women. I'm especially pleased this year to host the convocation ceremony during our Westbrook College reunion. And I think the marriage of these two very special events promises to make them both more enriching. And I hope that you'll agree that this will enable more of our alumni, classmates, and friends to join us for the annual celebration of the Deborah Morton Convocation. While the timing of this year's ceremony may be different, one thing remains the same, and that is the process by which our Deborah Morton Society awardees have been selected. The awardees are selected by a steering committee whose members spend countless hours reviewing the accomplishments and ultimately nominating awardees to fulfill the exacting standards set by the Society's guidelines. At this time, I'd really like to acknowledge those individuals who graciously served on the committee this year. They are Ellie Baker, Meg Baxter, Susan Carlisle, Kay Flanagan, Michelle Hood, Theo Calico, Gilda Nordone, Pat Peard, Barbara Trapton, and Peggy Wiggins. Thank you all for your hard work that made this event possible. The Deborah Morton Awards have been presented to more than 200 women over the past 57 years. Many of the recipients of the awards are here in the audience with us today. I'd like to invite all members of the Deborah Morton Society to please rise and be recognized. Thank you all. Thank you. I'd also like to take a moment to honor those members of the Deborah Morton Society who passed away since our last convocation. Sadly, our friends Elizabeth Warren, Peggy Osher, Helen Dudman, and Sally Rand are no longer with us. Let us take a moment of silence to reflect on their lives and acknowledge their absence. They will be missed. Thank you. We lost as well one other member of the Deborah Morton Society in April, one whose very special role at UNE calls for a few extra words of appreciation and for special reflection, and that is UNE's fourth president, Dr. Sandra Featherman. Sandra served as UNE president from 1995 through June of 2006, presiding over the merger between UNE and Westbrook College in 1996. Her sage vision and her wisdom and her bold action helped UNE gain the tradition of the amazing alumni body that Westbrook College brought into that merger. She was named an honorary alumna of Westbrook College in 1998 and of the University of New England in 2004. I had the pleasure of meeting Sandra prior to my inauguration as president, and then on a few other occasions afterwards. And I found her absolutely fascinating and delightful, and she was very supportive and very kind and gracious to me personally. She was a trailblazer for women in higher education, and she was a trailblazer for UNE in particular, and we will miss her. At a time when higher education for women was still in its infancy, Westbrook Seminary and later Westbrook College opened the doors to young women. Thirsty for knowledge and unwilling to accept the limitations many in society would ascribe to them, these women filled the halls of the Westbrook campus. They studied hard and they flourished, academically and socially. Now, generations later, our campus is still home to women, a great many women in fact, who study hard to earn their place in a wide array of professions no longer designated or restricted by gender. I hope the Westbrook College alumni in attendance feel some kinship with the young women working so hard to follow in their dreams on our campuses today. And I hope you are as proud of these young women as I am. If you are an alumna of Westbrook College, would you please be so kind as to rise and be recognized? Thank you. As alumni, you represent an important link in the lineage of our institution's evolution as home to pioneering, ambitious women unafraid to lead in important fields. If they were alive today, I suspect the members of these earliest classes of Westbrook Seminary and Westbrook College would be quite proud of the lives you've led and the careers you've enjoyed. And our students, I know, are appreciative of the various roles you've played that have paved the way for their success. The campus our students enjoy today certainly positions them to succeed. Over the past decade or so, we've worked hard to outfit it with innovative new learning spaces featuring the latest technology, while also maintaining and restoring those historic structures that provide its incredible sense of place. The marriage of cutting-edge facilities like our present setting, Innovation Hall, with iconic Westbrook College structures like Alumni Hall, make our campus together an important link, connecting the Westbrook Seminary to Westbrook College to the University of New England, as it is today. Another important aspect of our identity spanning the generations has been our amazing tradition of women leaders on our faculty, in our administration, and beyond. This society's namesake, of course, Deborah Morton, was a scholar, leader, reformer, mentor, teacher, and adventurer who traveled the world and brought back knowledge and experiences she shared with others, including her appreciative students at Westbrook College. Through the years, we've striven to foster a culture that positions women to lead. We are truly grateful for the contributions of Presidents Featherman and Rippich, whose achievements I'll be discussing in greater detail shortly. Our women trustees, deans, vice presidents also bring important insights to the institution. And many of our most prolific faculty members, in fact, are women, including Professor Megan May, who many of you heard last night speaking. The Deborah Morton Society symbolizes our institution's commitment to women leadership. And at this time, I'd like to turn our attention to three very remarkable women we've gathered to honor here today. I've asked members of our Board of Trustees to assist in sharing their names. Our first trustee who will do so is Story Landis.
It's my pleasure, on behalf of the Board of Trustees of the University of New England, to present 2018 Deborah Morton Society Award recipient, Danielle N. Rippich.
After serving as Associate Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences at Case Western Reserve University and as Dean of the College of Health Professions at the Medical University of South Carolina, Danielle Rippich became the 5th president of the University of New England in 2006. During her decade at the UNE helm, UNE saw unprecedented growth, tripling its enrollment. Danielle oversaw the launching of new colleges of pharmacy, graduate studies, and dental medicine, as well as 5 centers of excellence for research and scholarship and a new campus in Tangier, Morocco. The university built many new buildings during her tenure and grew a national reputation for excellence. In 2016, Maine Biz named her Maine Business Leader of the Year, and the Greater Portland Chamber of Commerce named her Economic Leader of the Year. But these are just 2 of the many, many accolades she earned during her time at UNE. It's worth noting as well that Danielle distinguished herself as a speech pathologist before entering higher education administration. She's internationally recognized for her research in the areas of child language and Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia. She's a fellow of the American Association for Advancement of Science, the Association of Schools of Allied Health Professions, and the American Speech, Language, and Hearing Association. She's published extensively and has served in editorial positions in numerous journals. On a personal note, I have to say that when I made the transition to the presidency of UNE in the spring and summer of 2017, Danielle was extremely generous with her time and attention and help for me during the transition, and I'll be forever grateful for that. It's my honor to introduce her today, Danielle.
Wow. I have to say, from that 2006 event, my first Deborah Morton, as Theo mentioned, when she became one of our awardees, this has always been one of my favorite days in the life of the university. All year long, I look forward to it. I never expected to be standing here, and you can hear I'm a little emotional to be here today. But how did I come to be here? I think we've all had those moments where you're sitting and you're like, how did I land here? What has happened? How did I get here? So what I'd like to tell you the story today of how I came to be here, to be part of this incredible group of women that I'm joining in the Deborah Morton Society, a place I never expected to find myself. Helping me find my way here on this path and journey, as Theo said, were a number of remarkable women. I grew up in a small town on the Ohio River, and my grandmother, who lived in the same block as us, was my favorite person in the whole world. She was born in 1906. She was one of 10 children, dropped out of school in the 6th grade, got married at 16. My mother was born when she was 20. She sent her son to the Marines in World War II, and she made everyone's life around her richer. She was the best storyteller and the best cook I have ever known. And one day, when I was 5 or 6 years old, she took me to town on the bus. And we're riding along in the bus, and we stopped at a traffic light in this little town, southern Ohio town, and there were some girls playing jump rope. There were black girls in this part of town, and they were playing jump rope, and a little girl with a yellow dress was waiting her turn, and I waved at her out the window, and she waved back at me. And my grandmother, she looked at me, and she said, "Do you think God loves you?" And I said, "Yes, God loves me," because you went to Bible schools in my town starting when you were 5 years old, so I knew that answer. I said, "Yes, God loves me." And she said, "Does God love her?" And I said, "Yes, God loves her too." And she said, "Does God love you more than he loves her?" Now it was getting tricky. And I said, "No, God loves us all the same." And she said, "And I want you to always remember that, you hear?" She said, "You are no better than anyone, and no one is better than you. We are all the same. We are all doing the best we can, and we need to all love each other." Love your neighbor as yourself was imprinted forever from that day on for me, and that lesson from my grandmother. My mother was valedictorian of her high school class, but there was no money for college. She went to work as a bookkeeper in the local drugstore. She and my dad married during the war. I was born when she was 20, and she began teaching. My dad went to school on the GI Bill, and when he finished, then my mom went to school at night, and so she began teaching as well. And I remember there was a time when she was going to be jailed for leading a teacher strike in Ohio, which was the first teacher strike in Ohio, and they weren't sure how to handle it. And at the morning of the strike, we got a phone call, and the school board had agreed to honor what they had promised the teachers. And my mom was president of the Teaching Association, and she said to me that day, "Going to jail for a principal is not the worst thing that can happen to you." And she said, "The most important thing you have is your good name, and you must always honor your word." And that was the lesson of her life that I took from that. She was an amazing person. So I married at 19. At 20, my daughter was born. You see a pattern here? It's like happening. Okay, so I did my part. And then I went to school at night, which is what you did back then. And I just kept going until I got my PhD. And I had a position then at Case Western Reserve, which is a Research One university. It was an amazing opportunity for me. And when I went there in 1982, and Story Landis, who was a colleague of mine there, will know this, 95% of the tenured full professors were men. 5% were women. I stayed at Case Western for 20 years. And when I left to go to the Medical University of South Carolina, 20 years later, 95% of the tenured full professors were men and 5% were women. So joining that 5% of tenured full professors at Case was probably one of the things I'm most proud of in my career. It was a different time. When the chance came to come to UNE, I was not thinking about being a university president. I was looking at retiring, actually, but that didn't happen. I always knew, I didn't know much about UNE, I had learned, but I knew a lot about Maine. And my dad, Margaret Chase Smith, the first woman ever elected to the Senate, Skowhegan, Maine. Frances Perkins, Newcastle, Maine, first woman to serve in a cabinet under FDR. Joni Benoit Samuelson. Some of these are Debbie Morton's, you all know that. The first woman to win the Olympic marathon was also from Maine. Susan and Olympia, the first state to have 2 women senators. I mean, I'm like thinking, this Maine, I gotta learn more about this place. This is amazing. And so I knew about them, but I didn't know the rest. And I came, and Wilma Redmond, Jean Wilkinson, Maddie Corson, Dodie Detmer, all these amazing women, Beth Ann Holmes, I met all of them, and they said, let us help you do this job. And Sandra Featherman had already paved the way as the first woman president, being a strong leader for the university. And I felt that this was an opportunity that was probably, I hadn't sought it, but it was not going to come again in my life. So 12 years ago, I took my belief in people that I got from my grandmother, and my belief in myself that I got from my mother, and my belief in the perseverance and strength of women to overcome difficult things that I got from my colleagues at Case Western Reserve, and also the support and strength that I felt coming from all these amazing Maine women. And I came to UNE, and I came to what has become a very beloved place for me, the state of Maine. So that's how I got here. I am so honored to be a part of this society, something I never expected. The Deborah Morton women, I have come to know them, I have come to love them, and I have come to feel honored to be a part of this incredible group. So thank you all.
Thank you so much, Danielle. I now call upon the University trustee Cindy Taylor to present her with the Deborah Morton Award candidate.
On behalf of the Board of Trustees of the University of New England, it is my pleasure to present the 2018 Deborah Morton Society Award recipient, Peggy Rotundo.
Peggy Rotundo currently serves as the Director of Strategic and Policy Initiatives for the Bate College Harvard Center for Community Partnerships. Her career in public service in Maine spans 23 years, 16 of which she spent in the Maine State House and Senate. As chair of the legislature's Appropriation and Financial Affairs Committee, she led the creation of bipartisan state budgets while advocating for increased educational opportunities and greater social and economic security for Maine families. During her tenure with the State House, she also sponsored legislation that created greater public access to government information, provided for a cleaner environment, and expanded health care for Maine citizens. Peggy has won numerous awards for her work on these issues and for her work in creating civil and respectful public discourse. In 2014, she was recognized for her work by being named Emerge Maine's Woman of the Year. Please join me in congratulating and welcoming Peggy Rotundo.
Good morning. We all stand on the shoulders of others, some known, many unknown to us, who've paved the way for us and given us the strength and vision to imagine all we could do with our lives. Today is a time to remember, honor, and celebrate the institutions and people who have believed in us and opened doors for us. People like Deborah Morton and the extraordinary women who are members of the society honoring her. It's a time for me to remember other inspiring and courageous women like my mother, who, when widowed at age 33, went on to earn 2 graduate degrees while raising 3 small children, working to support her family, and facing barriers and discrimination as a woman that are unimaginable today. Growing up, I was the beneficiary of great public schools, libraries, and parks, strong public institutions that were supported by the civic-minded taxpayers of Schenectady, New York. Schenectady was not a wealthy community, but was a community whose residents believed in promoting the common good and providing opportunity to all who lived there. My father, who was the son of poor Italian immigrants, had been raised in the same community, and I saw how these public institutions had opened up possibilities in his life that he never would have had otherwise. Francis Perkins, a hero of mine who served as the first U.S. Secretary of Labor and was the architect of the New Deal under Franklin Roosevelt, once said that government's job is to, quote, give all the people under its jurisdiction the best possible life, unquote. I saw firsthand in my childhood the difference that government, good government, plays in the lives of ordinary people. If you look at the patterns in my professional and civic life, you'll see my work has focused on helping others to create the best possible life for themselves. It's no surprise that I was called to public service as a way to try to give back and to lift others up. I remember clearly the conversation that I had 26 years ago that energized my interest in running for office. I had been asked to serve on a Lewiston committee set up to study the high dropout rate at our high school, and in connection with that work, interviewed one of our local kindergarten teachers. She told me that within a few weeks of the start of the school year, she could predict which of her kindergartners would graduate from high school and which ones wouldn't, based on the level of their language skills when they entered her class. Shocked by the knowledge that for many 5-year-olds, the race had been run before they got to kindergarten, I decided to run for the Lewiston School Committee, determined that I would do all I could to guarantee that all children in Lewiston would have the same educational opportunity my children would have, simply because of the family they were born into. My advocacy for educational equity continued once I got to the state legislature years later, though by this point I had learned that if children were going to succeed in school, they also needed adequate food, health care, and safe housing to provide the stability in their lives necessary to do well. Their parents also needed decent jobs. While the issues I advocated for in Augusta expanded with time, it continued to be the faces of the children in Mrs. Adams' kindergarten class that I saw in my head every morning for 16 years as I walked into the State House. I learned as an elected official how much you can accomplish if you don't care who gets the credit. I learned that good and effective leadership involves careful and empathetic listening, respect for differences of opinion and those who express them, patience, and hard work. I learned that you can compromise without compromising your principles. I also learned that the people we represent elect us to solve problems, and as elected officials, we must hold their trust in us as sacred. When I chaired the legislature's Appropriations Committee, I was told every year that the committee would never be able to reach bipartisan agreement on the state budgets we were tasked to negotiate. Just watch us, I would say. Our committee worked in a respectful and civil atmosphere, understanding that we were there to solve problems and to make state government work for the people of Maine. And every year, With very few exceptions, we voted out of our committee unanimous bipartisan budgets. I want to thank the University of New England Board of Trustees and the Deborah Morton Society for bestowing this extraordinary honor on me. And to all of you here who labor with courage, vision, and persistence every day to foster hope and possibility, and to build more just and equitable communities that work for all, I thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you, Peggy. Thank you very much for those inspiring words. I now call upon Catherine Hare to present her Deborah Morton Award candidate. Catherine is a member of the UNE Board of Trustees and also received the Deborah Morton Endowed Scholarship when she herself was a student at Westbrook College. Catherine.
On behalf of the Board of Trustees of the University of New England, it is my pleasure to present 2018 Deborah Morton Society Award recipient, Anita Stewart. Congratulations.
Serving as the Executive and Artistic Director of Portland Stage, Anita Stewart serves as one of the few theater designers in a regional theater leadership role today. During her tenure, she's kept the theater's mission alive through her commitment to finding exceptional local talent and attracting artists from around the country to create high-quality productions. Offstage, her work is evidenced by the theater's ever-expanding K-12 education and artistic development and dialogue programs. By using the process of theater, Stewart has developed age-appropriate educational programs that support the common core standards to help create the critical thinkers of the next generation. These programs are specifically designed to nurture developing young artists and further the skills of seasoned artists. Anita also plays integral roles in the national arts and community, where she participates in grant review panels for organizations like the Maine Arts Commission, National Endowment of the Arts, Massachusetts Cultural Council, Theater Communications Group, and Alpert Awards. As such, she remains keenly interested in promoting and cultivating audience involvement in the theatrical process, as well as artists' connection to their communities. Please join me in congratulating and welcoming Anita Stewart.
It's amazing to me to listen to all the speakers that have been up here this morning and see the connections and see what a wonderful community I am blessed to be a part of, and the amazing group of women of the Deborah Morton Society that I'm now honored to get to join. Like my fellow speakers, I too was really, my first experience was with my mother providing support to me. She was the daughter of Polish immigrants. She put herself through college and through graduate school, and it was through her actions that I really learned how to care for other people and learned the value of community. She volunteered to read to children at inner city day cares before there was anything called Head Start. She built houses with Habitat for Humanity, and once a week she would go over to an older woman's house, Alma Luso, and again, she would learn how to bake bread. Alma was so happy to share this experience of how to bake bread, and my mother was able to make sure that Alma had what she needed to get through the next day. My mom also wanted me to have the opportunities that she hadn't had as a child growing up, but at the same time, she wanted me to own them. She didn't want to give them to me. So when I said I want to take ballet classes, she got out the yellow pages and made me work with her to find a studio that I could go to. So I learned through that in this process I needed to invest in myself if I wanted to get anywhere in this world. I first encountered theater as a very young person, and it was the first time I was able to get outside of my gawky, shy 10-year-old self and collaborate with other people. and go to magical, magical places and do things that I had never imagined. And I was able to take that experience on, and years later, I gained a deeper understanding of what the theater could be from mentors at my in college and in graduate school, Ming Cho Lee and Jennifer Tipton, who taught me to excavate plays, taught me to use plays to understand differences in societies, in cultures, in ways of thinking. Each play becomes an opportunity to approach the world in a different way, from a different perspective. And when you include an audience in that, they change how you look at the world as well. And the theater becomes alive and a place where we as a collective can become something bigger and more than what we are. Coming to Portland, I had the opportunity to take all of these lessons and combine them together. And with a wonderful supportive partner, my husband, Ron Botting, we were able to really find a way to invest in this community. At Portland Stage, my goal is to engage all sorts of people in the work that we do with the theater, finding different ways to invite people in. From a circle of elementary school students exclaiming, "I shot an arrow into the air," and as they conjure these words, 20 arrows fly out of their imaginations through their bodies and their voices, and they bring a poem by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow to life, and we all discover that poem in a new way together. Or the women of Southern Maine Reentry Center coming to see Lady Day at Emerson's Bar and Grill, a play about Billie Holiday. These women who are working to move out of a correctional facility and back into the world witness a celebrity sharing her struggles of alcohol addiction and sharing her own stories of incarcerations. Well, right next to them, there's an elderly gentleman who knows Billie's music, but is experiencing the raw reality of her American experience for a first time. Telling a story to a group of people lets us come together, and we slip our feet into somebody else's shoes, and we walk in those for a while. We get to understand the world from a different perspective, not by ourselves, but in community. We bear witness, and just perhaps the experience gives us insight, it gives us empathy, and it gives us the ability to understand another point of view. Rather than black and white, the world with theater becomes a rainbow of colors, a crazy quilt of stories that come together of different sizes and shapes and colors, and makes a world that is the different world that we see around us and all the different communities that are in America today. For me, it is the stories, and it is the sharing of the stories through which we become most human. For we create a common mythology through which we have the possibility to see a new and a better world. Theater opens our past and present so that we can imagine our future. Shakespeare got it right. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women are merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts. May the parts that you play, along with the parts that I play, be as a student, as a teacher, as a parent, as a child, as a friend, as a partner, as a promoter, as a provoker, to make our world a better place. Thank you to the Deborah Morton Society for inviting me in.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Anita. Please accept my sincere congratulations to your induction into the Deborah Morton Society. We're so proud to all of you for joining us today. Now, what I'd like to do now is ask each of the inductees to come back to the stage to receive their certificate in appreciation and recognition of their induction into the Society. So first, Distinguished Emeritus President Danielle Rippich.
Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle, and you've been a true inspiration to me, so thank you so much. And Peggy Rotundo. Thank you, Peggy. We can use more of your encouragement of civil, across the aisle discourse these days. So maybe back to the State House? So, and Anita, please. So our youngest son, Joel, had a very transformative experience recently participating as the lead in 2 different theatrical productions. And he was a STEM kid and a bit of a jock and never thought he would do theater, and it's changed his life. So your words resonated with me, thank you. And I'd like to just, and if you all would indulge me just for a moment, I'd like to take a little bit of liberty here. This whole day is about recognizing powerful, inspiring women who have transformative effects on all of us. And there's 2 women that I want to really just acknowledge today, one of whom has been by my side helping me during this year of transition as I've transitioned into the UNE presidency. And there's no other individual who has had as much of a role in helping me side by side in working through this year. And so I'd like to acknowledge Senior Vice President for Finance and Administration, Nicole Trufant. Nicole, could you please stand up? So, Nicole is, as they say, wicked smart, and truly a friend and a partner, and has helped me understand the university way down in the weeds in detail in a way that, and has made the transition much better and more powerful and more effective than it would have been otherwise. So Nicole, thank you very, very much. And the other person I'd like to acknowledge, many of you may not know this, but this is the individual who's truly had the biggest effect on me and my life, outside of my own mom, perhaps, but that's a whole other story. And that is my life partner, my wonderful wife, the love of my life, Len Brandsma. Len, can you... And so, those of you that don't know Len, first of all, she has a wicked smart sense of humor as well, and she's a lot of fun. And Len, this past year, made a sacrifice, which was our youngest son, Joel, was finishing high school. And so she stayed in Philadelphia while I came up here to begin the year. And in addition to seeing him through his senior year of high school, packing up 30 years of macaroni art and broken IKEA furniture and everything so that we could move to Maine. And then she finally arrived literally 2 days ago. And so we're back together. So thank you, Len, for your help through everything, and also for the role that you'll continue to have at UNE side by side with me going forward, because it truly is a partnership. And Nicole, I can't thank you enough for all the help that you have been and will continue to be going forward. So thank you both very, very much. At this time, I'd like to reintroduce Theo Calico to come take over the program. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, President Herbert. On behalf of the steering committee of the Deborah Morton Society, I add my congratulations to those of President Herbert and officially welcome you as the Society's newest members. Again, thank you all for joining us today for the Deborah Morton Society Convocation. I hope you'll join us for a lunch in the back of this room after the platform party departs the stage. Thank you all very much.